Estás viendo Canal América, televisión dominicana para el mundo.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your fears.
Welcome to A Time for Truth show. It's my pleasure to have you back with us again. And I'm your host, Dr. Bernard Fialkoff. Today we're going to be speaking about someone from Gambia, from the African continent, and very important because it's said to be where the next civilization is going to be springing from. So much potential, so many resources, and so much possible that can occur. So it's our pleasure, and Buddha, if you can put his pictures up on the screen, I want to introduce our viewers to Mr. Saikou Camara of Gambia, West Africa, who is a network engineer and project manager consultant for ICOS Consulting USA. He's traveled to the United States to obtain his BS, Bachelor of Science, and master's degrees in computer science from Rust College and Jackson State University. Mr. Camara is founder and president of Your Change for a Change, an international nonprofit organization located in the USA, Gambia, United Kingdom, Sweden, and France. He is also president of the nonprofit organization People Making a Difference, comprised of young African professionals. He is currently a board member for the Simple Foundation, and as an activist with a passion for youth empowerment, he co-founded the Global Leadership Empowerment and Diversity Summit in 2016, uniting diverse groups of young leaders to develop innovative ideas and solutions for everyday challenges which are facing diverse communities all around the globe. Mr. Camara draws from his experience as a trained IT professional and president for nonprofit organizations to provide project development consultancy for many startup businesses and entrepreneurs, especially in the field of technology and not-for-profit. He is an international motivational speaker and a seasoned storyteller. As an African, storytelling is part of his culture, and it plays an instrumental part of his life. He perceives storytelling as an art form that links to our cultures, and gives foresight into the future. Saikou has been invited to speak at the White House, the United Nations, the Montfort University, Bowie State University, Virginia Tech University, RightsCon in Brussels, Portland University, University of Gambia, the Omaha YP Summit, amongst many others. He is also an author and authored the books The Testimony of an African Immigrant, A Promise to My Father, Testimony of an African Immigrant, Part 2, Relentless Audacity, and Africa Through a Mirror. We have a continent to build. He was awarded the Superior Community Service Award by the Black Employee Network and the Citizen of the Year Award 2 years in a row by the Beta Upsilon chapter of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. And in 2012 and 21, he was awarded by the Pan-African Youth Leadership as one of the 100 most influential young Africans of that time. And Buddha, if you can bring him up on the screen, I want to welcome to a Time for Truth show to Mr. Saikou Camara. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bernard. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here today with you and your audience, your viewers. Thank you very much, and I'm very, very honored to come here to share my story, but also to kind of give you a little bit insight about who I am and where I'm from and the current state of the youth affairs in the Gambia that may interest you as well.
Absolutely. So the first thing I wanted to go into in honor of your parents is tell us a little bit about why you got so motivated, what your parents' role was. Go ahead.
I grew up with two parents who did not go to school. Neither of them can read or write in the English language. One of the moments in my life that changed the trajectory of my early childhood development was around my third grade. We had what you called in the West a parent-teacher meeting. Our teacher, third grade teacher, asked us to invite our parents for a meeting in school, and we must come with our parents. Like other pupils, I also invited my father to come with me. When we arrived at the school campus, the teacher was standing at the school gate greeting parents as they enter the school campus. And I noticed that she was addressing other parents with salutations such as, "Hello, Mr. Njai. Hello, Mr. Cisse. Welcome, Mrs. Ndur. How are you doing, Mr. Johnson?" Things like that. And when she got to my dad, she just casually said, "Hello, Camara." As early as that age, I noticed that there's a change in her tone. But more importantly, I felt like she did not accord my father the amount of respect he deserved as a man. While everyone else called Mr., Miss, or Mrs., he just got addressed as Camara. At that age, very quickly, I learned that in my community, when you do not have an education, if you are not educated, you are just Bernard. If you are educated, then you have Mr. Bernard. So I realized that the reason why my dad wasn't getting the proper respect I assumed or I thought he deserved was because his lack of Western education. So after the meeting, I was pretty much very ashamed and embarrassed. And at the same time, very agitated and angry at my dad for allowing a third grade teacher disrespect him like that. And I confronted my dad, and he looked at me with a very, very somber voice. And mind you, before this point, my dad is the greatest man that I ever known in the world. To me, he's almost immortal. This man, there's nothing that he cannot do. But that was the first time I saw mortality through my father's eyes. He looked at me and said to me, "If your parents are more educated than your parents, that is no fault of yours. If your parents have more money than your parents, that is no fault of yours. But if for any reasons your peers become more successful than you, that will be entirely your fault. I will do everything I can in my capacity as your father with your mother to make sure that you will get the education that you deserve. You will get the education that you need, so that one day when your peers get addressed as Mr. and Mrs., you will not be addressed as Camara, but they will put a Mr. before your name as well." I took that. I wasn't satisfied with his answer. Mind you, I'm still a third grade student. I wanted him to do more, right? But I wasn't satisfied. But one thing as young Africans, one thing you never do, you never challenge your parents, let alone twice in one day. So I let it go. But from that point on, few weeks later, our third grade teacher asked us, "What do we want to become when we grow up?" And every other people in the school or in the classroom said things that I want to become a president, I want to become a minister, I want to become a parliamentarian, I want to become a police officer, I want to become blah, 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 blah. When she got to me, I said, "I want to become a mister." And imagine the confusion in her face. And she said, you can become something like an office clerk and be a mister. And I said to her, I don't know what it takes to become an office clerk. At that point in my life, I don't have any role models who are educated. I don't know what it takes to become an engineer or a lawyer. All I know is you have to be educated to be addressed as Mr. in my community, and I will make sure that I am called a Mr. one day. So that was the beginning of my journey. I didn't know what I want to become when I grow up. I didn't know what level of education I want to have. All I know is I want to be addressed as Mr. And the only way I can attain that is through proper education. And that's lit the fire in me from my third grade to today. And every stage in my life, I realized that as you do more, as you want to accord more respect in your community, as you want to impact your community more, it takes more than just to be a mister. It takes you to be a responsible adult in your community. It takes become a service to your people. It become a call upon me to make sure that the work that I do will no longer be just about me, but it's going to be about my people as well. So this is the short story between me and my parents that kind of inspired me to be the kind of adult that I am today.
Beautiful, beautiful story. Makes total sense. And, you know, you've accomplished much more than Mr.
Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. And when I first met you, you know, your manner, your character, you know, is amazing. And, you know, there's a lot of things we spoke about. So I wanted to ask you, why did you decide to found your Change for Change Foundation? What was it that you were looking at?
Dr. Bernard, one thing is shocking about this war, right? Every minute, a child died of malaria somewhere in this war. As we're speaking right now, before the end of this discussion, there will be nothing less than 50 children who are going to die of malaria. And malaria is a disease that is very, very preventable and at the same time curable.
Right.
But it affects children under 5 years and pregnant mothers more than any other people in this world. The community that I grew up in, the number one deadliest disease is not HIV and AIDS. It's not cancer or diabetes or tuberculosis or the current COVID-19. Up to today, the number one killer disease in my community remains to be malaria. Wow. And I found that to be shocking at that time. So myself and few people some of my high school friends that I grew up with, I started having a conversation with them. We can sit here and complain about everything our government is doing and not doing to help make sure that they take care of this pandemic, which I consider a pandemic in my community in 2011. Or we can do the little things we can in our own little capacities to bring some form of a positive change to our communities. And this was a time when people were using Skype more than any other probably social media for meetings and conferences. So I set up a Skype meeting with some of my friends in Europe, some of my friends in Africa, some of my friends who were studying in Taiwan at the time, some of my friends who were here in America with me. And I told them, listen, we can't keep on complaining about what our government, our politicians are doing or not doing. At one point, do we take responsibility and say, what am I doing for my community and my immediate community, from my household to my village to my city, all the way to the entire country? What are we going to do about it? So we came up with this idea that we want to form an organization that's going to focus on health. And health is very wide. We said that our first project within the for the organization will be focused on providing, number one, how do you provide sensitization and education to young children and women who live in rural Gambia, so that they understand how to protect and prevent this transmission of malaria, and also how can they help themselves to protect themselves and their families from the malaria diseases within the communities that has been impacting them more than any other thing. And we decided we will do fundraisings. We did fundraisings in Europe, in America, in Africa. and we bought mosquito bed nets from made by this Canadian company in Canada at the time, and we started distributing those bed nets in Africa. But then the name itself, Your Change for a Change, came from the simple fact that we said that we want everyone, whatever it is that you can bring. It doesn't matter your level of education. It doesn't matter how much money you have in your pocket. Whatever change that you feel you have in your heart and your mind that you believe will be able to impact our community, especially in the area of health, bring it on board. And then we will find a way to use it to implement it in our communities to change somebody's life, if it is going to be one child. So that's how the name Your Change for a Change come about, which is whatever change you have, bring it on, let's put it together, let's generate and make a more impactful change in our community. And then we also started launching other programs like a scholarship program, focusing on young children who are going to elementary school, whose parents sometimes pull them out of school because they cannot afford maybe books, they cannot afford school uniforms, or they cannot pay for their tuition in school. We started sponsoring those kids. And we also did a program that we call Saving Smiles program. We go to the local hospitals. We visit the sick children and pregnant women. We try to find out the vulnerable people who cannot afford to pay their medical bills. We will pay their medical bills while they're in hospital. In the hospital, we will give the children some toys to play with. And then we also provide them food, because sometimes we find out that people will be in the hospital. They don't even have food to eat. They can afford to buy food to eat, let alone to go outside and buy medication that has been prescribed to them by some of the doctors or nurses. So we did all of those things. We also had a mentorship program where we would go into high schools and elementary schools. We talk to young children. Like I told you, growing up, I had no idea what it takes to become an engineer or a doctor, because I have never had a role model, and I've never met a doctor who ever taught me what it takes to become one. So instead, what we do is now we go back to those high schools and elementary schools to talk to the children about, if you have a dream to be an engineer, if you have a dream to become whatever you want to be in this world, we will bring people from that field to kind of help you, show you the path, show you what it takes and what it requires to become successful in your endeavors. And this is the story and the work that Your Change for a Change does.
Beautiful. Well, it's totally amazing, very helpful, practical, really doing something, not just talking about it. And, so I laud you for that. What I was going to ask you, because you mentioned something to me when we were at a conference the other day. What is the present situation in Gambia with drugs?
I call it what we see in Gambia is something that is becoming a drug epidemic that we are not taking with the seriousness that is required. In our society, we are only currently, in my opinion, others can decide to have others ideas about it, but this is based on my own observation assessment. I've been there for 14 months last year in Gambia without traveling anywhere, 14 straight months from 2000 all the way to 2001 ending. I was in Gambia. One of the things that I realized is that we as a community, we are only looking at some of the effects of the drug epidemic in the country, things like crime rates is going up. We are not looking at the factors that are leading towards this crime rate. We are seeing a whole rise in mental illness among young people. We are not looking at some of the causes that are leading to this mental illness with young people either. But one thing I have noticed very quickly is that for a country that doesn't produce anything, a third world poor country that is depleted in terms of resources, our economy is very, very weak and poor. For some reason, you have drugs like ecstasy, and I'm not sure what is the scientific name for some of these drugs, so I'm only giving you the street names that I heard from young people in the streets. What's the drugs like ecstasy, Mali, drugs like they call hash, drugs called like skunk, right? These are all street drugs that I see young people using. A country that doesn't even produce paracetamol or aspirin, how are they getting these social drugs that they are getting high on? Who is bringing them into the country? Why are they so affordable for a country where people are so poor? Sometimes they don't eat 3 square meal a day. How are these young people able to afford these social drugs that I see young people experimenting with in New York, in Chicago, in Arkansas? Why are these drugs so prevalent and available, so accessible to young people in our country? And these are the things that concerns me as a young man today, as a Gambian, as an African, wherein we have our largest portion of our population is all young people under the age of 35 years old, which are about almost 65 to 70% of our population. And we are watching all that go into the drain by young people experimenting with drugs and that transforming into high crime rate. I have personally seen it. I have seen young people committing crimes that I have never seen growing up in Gambia. I have seen a young man stabbed at the beachside by someone who was so high on drugs. When he was arrested, when he woke up the next day in jail, he could not even remember taking somebody's life. That's how high he was on drugs, right? And then I've seen young people that I've grown up with. I have seen friends that I've grown up with who were very healthy, very, very active in our community, and all of a sudden they lose their conscious mind. All of a sudden we call them mad men. The street term, they are just mad. They are crazy people. In fact, they are suffering from different forms of mental illnesses because of their brain, their cognitive understanding of their brain is being affected by drugs that they have no business taking. They are taking foreign substances they do not understand, and they don't have some of the social nets that we have in the West. If you are high on drugs and you want to get off drugs, we have trained clinical institutions. We have trained doctors and trained therapists who can help you out here. In Africa, and especially in Gambia, where we are depleted in almost anything, the government and our institutions are struggling even to provide simple medication for sick people in our hospital. They definitely do not have the budget, neither do they have the resources as far as human capacity to provide these young people some of the social services that they need to recover once they get hooked on these drugs. So the situation is very, very alarming for me. It's concerning for me because I'm literally seeing our future, what is our future looks like 10 years from now, 20 years from now, considering that our young people are just getting wasted every day.
Absolutely. You know, it's very interesting what you mentioned, which is a very good point. How is it that this country, when it doesn't even have simple analgesics, and yet you have these drugs? Very interesting point to look at, and that needs to be really investigated, because obviously it's not in the best interest of the country. You make so many good points, and you know that you're elucidating. So I know we have a little more time left in the show, and there's so much we have to cover. So I want to ask you something, because I see that you've spoken, and you're an international motivational speaker. You've spoken at the White House. You've spoken at the United Nations. Tell us about those experiences a little bit.
I consider myself very lucky and very privileged to be able to have those opportunities to speak at those institutions. It's not because I am the most qualified person in the world to do it. It's not because I am the most educated person in the world to be invited to those situations. I have grew up with people in the same high school, in the same community, who have beat me in class in terms of exams, who got better results than I did in terms of school results. I consider myself blessed and lucky to be able to have the opportunity to come to America and get an education that allowed me to develop myself to the point where I have those opportunities. So I just want to make that known first. But those experiences were also very, very unique to me, and they were about issues that I'm very, very passionate about. Like the White House, when I was invited there, it was around the 2015 during Obama's, we call it Obama White House. This was also during the time when we see the rise against almost immigrants, not only in America, but almost anywhere in this world. You have major right-wing political movements all across the world does seem to have the sentiments against immigrants and invasions and taking back our country kind of sentiments and rhetorics going around all around the world. Not only, like I said, this is not just something unique to America. We have seen this in Germany. We have seen this in countries, places like India. We have seen these places like China. So it will happen globally everywhere in the world. Even in South Africa, we saw some level of xenophobia where some Nigerians were attacked by some South African natives because they feel like they need to take their country back. So this conversation was centered at the White House about what are some of the positive impacts of immigration. Because in America, when people speak of immigration, a lot of times, and I don't mean this in any bad way, but we only focus on the U.S. borders with Mexico, with Haiti, all these other countries around here, around the U.S. No one actually looked at immigration holistically. We have immigrants from China. We have immigrants from Europe, white immigrants in America. I have a lot of Spanish friends from Spain who are immigrants here in America. We have a lot of African immigrants here in America as well. We have immigrants from the Middle East. So we have immigrants from everywhere in this world who happen to meet up in this melting pot that we call the United States of America. So I was just there among other young Africans and other immigrants from other places to talk about what are some of the positive impact of immigration to in America here. We looked at especially like entrepreneurship. What is the impact of entrepreneurship? How many immigrants came here, set up businesses and paying taxes and directly contributing money into our economies, right? People don't talk about
Saikou,
those kind of things.
you know what I was going to say to you? First of all, I want to say one thing. You're a very humble man, and I see why you're so lucky, because I see that your motivation is not selfish, and it's for the world, and you have a very logical and long-term perspective. It's beautiful. We're going to have you back because unfortunately we've run out of time on the show, but I want to thank you for having been here.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bernard, and thank you to your viewers for having me. And hopefully we will do this again.
Absolutely. We're going to have to do this some more. And for those of you watching, let's take Saikou's example and let's learn from the things that we see in our life. Let's get educated. Let's be open to see things. Education is not just in the school. It's also in life and with your family and with your community. So for those of you out there, let's see what we can do to change this world. Thank you, Saikou, and have a very good night to all.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your feet